Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the debut record from Satanic North, also self-titled Satanic North, out April 19th on Reaper Entertainment Europe. The album has 10 tracks, 38 minutes in length, and they are a Finnish black metal band. Now, as you would expect from a black metal record that has 10 songs and is 38 minutes in length, the album is very compact and it's very balanced. That doesn't mean the record becomes repetitive. The shortness of the album and a few pivots that exist within the record definitely improve the mobility of the album, making the experience feel more dynamic and more fluid. I really enjoyed this design. I enjoyed this approach because it allows the record to feel very compact but still dynamic enough to have playability, not just the first time that you go through it, but every time you come back to the album, you always feel like it's a new experience and you're listening to it for the very first time. It's a fine line that you walk when you have a design like this, but I felt like they were able to nail it and provide a great experience to the listener. Now, as far as the sound is concerned, talk about walking fine lines. This record, sound-wise, also walks a very fine line between being an old-school black metal record and being a more modern black metal record. And the reason why I feel like this album walks that fine line is because it has some old-school elements in it. It has them in the song designs, it has them in the song structures, and it has it in the sound itself. There are elements of this record, on the sound of this record, either coming from the guitars or the bass, that add a little bit of grit. The album at times feels slightly unpolished, but that slightly unpolished nature of the record adds charisma and adds that black metal aroma that helps define what the DNA of the band is. It's not a full-blown old school sounding record, but it definitely has pieces of that era. Now, it also has pieces of a more modern era. That's why I say it walks this fine line, because it's somewhere in between. It doesn't have that more modern, clean production that we're starting to see on a lot of black metal records. Even old school bands that are releasing new records are moving sometimes towards this more polished, almost texturized sound. This record doesn't have that, but it doesn't have a sound that it's murky. It has a clear experience. You're able to hear what the guitars are doing. You're able to hear the drums, the bass, the vocals, how they come together as one to create the nuances within the songs, but not over sterilizing those elements and the overall sound itself. So this is why I say the sound on this record has elements of old school black metal and then elements more traditionally seen in new black metal records and new black metal bands. So it's an album that has that ability to walk those two worlds and perhaps take a little bit of the best of both of them, bringing them together under one single umbrella. Now, this is also an album that sound-wise, it's definitely driven by the guitars. The guitars are the main focus of the record, as I expected coming in, and I love the guitar sound all around. I love the more melodic, dark sound that the album has, very penetrating melodic riffs that really cut through any of the noise around, cut through the drums, cut through the bass, cut through the vocals, and they create this thin veil of atmosphere that always feels very dark and somber. But I also enjoyed the heavier sound of the guitars. I enjoyed how driven the guitars were. I enjoyed some of the grit that showcases itself sporadically throughout the album. So it's an album that from a guitar standpoint, you could say that it's very textured. I would rather say that it's very rich because it offers you different experiences, but never too far away from the same starting point. Now, the drums on this record create depth, and the way they created depth on this album is by having the heavier portion of their sound sit in the background and create the foundation. Then you have some of the cymbals, some of the lighter sound, some of the more splashier sound coming a little bit more to the forefront, and there's a clear separation between the two. It's not like it's easy to find the path from one to the other. They really feel segregated from one another, but having them that far apart and then using the guitars in between and the vocals in between and the bass in between creates a certain depth that is still associated to the same element. This is important because it adds to that balance and that cohesiveness that I was talking about. The overall design of the record is also present in the individual construction of the songs. The bass, I mentioned it already, it has quite a bit of grit. It pops a lot, not constantly. It's not always in the forefront. You're not always being slapped with a bass in the face, but every time the bass creeps up, either throughout a song or more predominantly in a track here and there, there's always this fuzziness, there's always this grit that comes with the bass that adds more than enough atmosphere, and it adds to the overall darkness of the tracks and of the record, and it brings in a little bit of an old school flavor to the way the songs are being presented. One element that stays super consistent from start to finish is the vocals. The vocals are what they are from the first track all the way to the last. There are some backing vocals here and there. There are some bigger sounding vocals in terms of the layers and textures within some of the choruses, but overall the vocals are super consistent, and it's definitely one element that gives this record a very specific DNA outside of the sound. Perhaps the one that imprints itself a little bit deeper because of how consistent it is. And for a debut record, this is a fun record. This is a good black metal album, and when you look at it, it doesn't come across as a debut record. It doesn't feel scattered. Debut records normally come across from two different angles. One, either they feel completely scattered because the songs were created over a very long period of time and there's a disconnect from one track to the next, or they feel so tight, so cohesive, there's almost no changes, there's almost no ebbs and flows from track to track because there was this conscious effort to make the album feel very uniform. This record doesn't fall prey of either or. It's an album that comes across more like a third record where you've learned from the mistakes of the past and you're able to move beyond them and grow as a band. So it's an album that for a debut record, it offers a lot of growth and a lot of quality with it. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Arise, super driven and dark song. There is some grit in the sound, predominantly from the guitars, which adds to the overall dark, menacing sound and experience that the song has. The vocals also help define that same darkness, and I think the two go really well together. The chorus is simple but memorable. You have a simple chorus, you're going to make the chorus a lot easier to remember, a lot easier to connect to, making the song all around stay with the listener for a much longer period of time. It definitely helps that this track also has this nice energy to it, this nice movement to it, both musically and vocally. Next we have Four Demons. This track has a nice melodic underline to it, and that melodic underline is the element that really brings that same darkness that it's scattered across the entire album to the surface. And I like that the melody on this track, that underline melody at times, really cuts through the darker sound of the guitars. It's a really interesting element because it creates some duality and creates not only richness of sound but texture as well across the guitar sound, cutting through like a knife, making the sound not only feel dark but also more penetrating. I think that's an important element that this song offers. The vocals are very constant, very balanced, and that approach is really important because it feels like the vocals are the ones leading the track, not necessarily the guitars. With the guitar sound being a little bit more rich, having the vocals leading the charges is a nice way of balancing out the track. Last but definitely not least, my favorite song on the entire record, Kohti, Kuolemaa. And this song is phenomenal. It's a song that's different from every single song on this record. It's different musically, it's different vocally, it's different lyrically. Maybe not vocally, but lyrically is different. So there's a lot of new nuances that this song brings to the table. It's a unique track with unique characteristics, with unique presentation. I love how it feels a lot more linear in the verses and then with a much bigger chorus. Talk about having a memorable chorus. This one is memorable not because it's simple, but because of the volume and size that it carries. It also has heavier drums in that chorus, so the drums create this bombastic, big volume, big presence, big size experience, and it's a track that stands out for all that it offers. I love this song. I love the finish in it, and I almost wish they had more tracks like these because the album needed perhaps one more song like this to really help break the record. This one comes at the end of the album, at the tail end of the album, so it's almost a nice bonus surprise that you're not expecting to see, and I love the fact that it really works well as a surprise and as a song that really jolts you, but jolts you at the end of the experience, so it doesn't affect how you find the overall fluidity of the album to be. This is it, Satanic North with their self-titled record, Satanic North, out April 19th on Reaper Entertainment Europe. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section, and I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.